and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and we have Marshall Masters with us from YOWUSA.com. Now, during this presentation, Mr. Masters brings up the prophecies and how oftentimes a good prophecy has a harbinger associated with it beforehand. And if you look at the 2012 different events in the past that have seemed to be like a cry wolf type scenario, let's discuss the 2012 scenario, December 21st, 2012, Mayan prophecies. The media had a field storm with this, and they did the ultimate cry wolf, in my opinion, kind of like back in 2000, where they made people fear the end of the world, a solar flare, mass earthquakes, volcanoes, etc., kind of like the movie 2012. And Mr. Masters thinks that that was the harbinger, essentially. So I don't know why I keep having a tough time saying that. But regardless, was the Mayan 2012 prophecy taken out of context to desensitize the masses? And why is the date of December 21st, 2012 so significant? What does it have to do with the alignment of our planet in the galactic plane, etc.? Now, where did the Mayans get their technology? And why did their culture fall so fast? Mr. Masters believes the Anunnaki actually gave the Mayans specific technologies. Also, we discussed the huge increase in earthquakes, volcanoes, meteors, comets, fireballs, etc. since 2012, December 21st. The level, the increase is astronomical. It's substantial to say the least. The media terminology in reference to meteors, they can be called fireballs, they can be called asteroids. They have different significance as well. Mr. Masters discusses that with us. The chemtrail discussion beyond geoengineering, are they actually terraforming the planet to meet certain agendas? Are there specific off-world interests that want to change the atmosphere? Did you guys see the Superman movie that came out, the most recent one? Not the one with Superman and Batman, but essentially, towards the end of the film, the way that Zorg and his alien buddies are attempting to destroy the planet is with a terraforming machine to fit their, to make it a better atmosphere for their livelihood, essentially. We then get into the elections, Trump, the media spin on Russia having a big influence on the elections and essentially hacking the system so Trump could get in. Is the media spinning Trump as an agent to fit the Clinton/Soros type agenda, the globalist agenda? Are they trying to just squash the nationalist type agenda that Trump seems to be so gung-ho towards right now? Or is it all just charades? Is the whole world a stage? Are we essentially living in the Truman Show? Or are we going towards a technocratic, corporate tech, totalitarian New World Order? And what's the end-game agenda? And what can we do to defend ourselves from the tyranny? This is discussed and more. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord. Become a exclusive member at leakproject.com and get access to exclusive content. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy the presentation and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. Marshall, it's been a while since we've spoken. How the heck are you?
I'm okay. Getting good and getting better every day, Rex.
Awesome.
Good to be on.
Let's get into this. What is going on with this meteor warning?
Well, we started with looking at meteors back in 2015, J.P. Jones, and he's a really good analyst. And what happened was back then, there was another YouTube channel producer who was really finding fault with the calendar issues in 2012. And so it got us curious, and we decided to revisit December 21, 2012 to see if it was in fact a noteworthy event. In other words, prophecy comes in two parts. You have the harbinger, and then you have the event. And there's no point in saying, well, on a certain day, everything's going to end, and there's no harbinger that tells you that you're actually on that timeline to that event. Excuse me. And when it does happen, it's like, hello, I see it happening around me. So, what's the big thrill of the prophecy being fulfilled on the same day? On the other hand, good prophecy gives us harbingers so that we can do something about it. And as I always say about prophecy and predictions is that always never live in expectation of it, but always be mindful of it. That's important. And because things do change. I believe, they call it the Mandela effect. And at first, I didn't know really if I was going to take it seriously or not. And then I did. And it was in a Costco of all places, walking down the aisle. And, I remember OxyClean was OXY, and now it's OXI. And I've seen some of these other things that definitely indicate that we have shifted on our timeline, which changes timing. But what the Mayans were looking for was a specific celestial alignment on December 21, 2012. And this would be something that their descendants would be able to observe this alignment and know that the harbinger had come, that they would be facing a global cataclysm. And, that was when we were in December 21, 2012, we were passing through the plane of our galaxy, the Milky Way. And now, it doesn't happen all in one day. It takes several years to do that. But we were at that alignment where we were transitioning from one hemisphere of our galaxy to the other. And this is a clear time for all of the Mayan descendants to understand you better get ready because bad news is coming. So J.P. Jones and I had a lot of conversations about this in response to this other fellow's issues about the calendar. And, there were some calendar issues. For example, Zecharia Sitchin said that the orbit of planet X is 3,600 years. What Sitchin did not do, all right, was that he wasn't specific. He didn't say 3,600 lunar years. He said 3,600 years. So everyone uses a Gregorian calendar, and that skews all of the calculations. It was the lunar calendar. And actually in the Lost Book of Enki, it's written that Lord Enki of the Anunnaki invented the very first calendar for Earth. It was a lunar calendar, had 2 seasons, winter and summer. I guess kind of like living in Phoenix, Arizona. And
right.
they just have 2 seasons.
2 extremes.
Hot and really hot. Huh?
Said 2 extremes.
2 extremes. And so, that was one of the timeline issues. But again, a celestial alignment, all right, is not going to be subject to the, veracity of a calendaring system. It is what it's going to be, period. And so on December 21, 2012, the message was clear that the harbinger was fulfilled, the alignment was seen, which was the beginning of a new calendar, the end of an old, and that following that would come a chaotic, a time of chaos, a time of suffering and pain. And from 2 different directions too. We have the galactic superwave we have to deal with. As a matter of fact, people are concerned about, later this month that we have another, wave event that's going to hit us. But then also we're going to have the return of the Planet X system crossing through in another flyby. Now, all of that is hypothetical. And before you just run off and cook an idea on some hypothetical notion, what you need to do is find empirical data. And when I'm saying empirical, this is like take it to the bank kind of good. This is really solid stuff. And so the thing here is that we started looking around for data sets to test this hypothesis that December 21, 2012 was in fact a harbinger and it had been fulfilled. So the two that we selected were earthquakes and meteors. There were quite a few others. All right. And, you start looking at volcanic activity, it's off the charts right now. The Ring of Fire is on fire. And Popo down in Mexico, that thing's getting ready to pop. So that, those are viable data sets. However, we chose earthquakes and we chose meteors because earthquakes are going to be related to our planet being perturbed by the sun's interaction with this incoming brown dwarf star, Nemesis, at the core of the Planet X system. And meteors, because, think of it like you watch on television where there's the ship and they're shooting straight down at the bow, cutting through the water, and there are the porpoises dancing in front of it on the bow wave. So if we have a system that's moving in, it's essentially going to have a bow wave. And coming through our inner system like a cue ball and just banging things in every which way and direction. And so there are objects out there in space that are in benign orbits that are never near Earth or Earth crossing that now are being thrown in our direction. Well, what we found when we did this is that the increases in earthquakes was absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. But what I need to point out is that there is a lot of cooking of the books. And one of the things that you're going to hear from debunkers is they're going to say, well, category 5 or above or category 6 and above, there's a reduction in them. All right. Well, that is really nonsense, because think about how many times you hear of an earthquake reported and the first thing our government does is it downgrades it. What was a 6.1 now becomes a 5.8. What was a 5.2 becomes a 4.9. So they're always gerrymandering the numbers. And that's the reason why we said, fine, let's take and create a viable baseline, because there's all of this subjective ranking of the intensity. Let's just say total number of earthquakes, period. That's it, of all magnitudes. This factors out the way that the government's cooking the books. So when we did that, what we saw was that in this, if you look at for the period of January 2012 through February 2013, that we were averaging between 1,500 to 2,000 earthquakes a month. That's January through December of 2012. Then all earthquakes of all magnitudes, and I'm showing this in my video. People can see this on my website at YOW-USA. Just look for signs number 13, meteor warning. And in January of 2013, the number of earthquakes skyrocketed. It's like, remember Roadrunner and Coyote? And
oh, yeah.
Coyote would always get the Acme rockets, light a fuse, zoom straight up,
Oh, yeah.
Well, the Coyote's riding all this one, but I'll tell you, he's a flying, because in December, there were approximately 1,500 earthquakes on December 21, 2012. And in January, that went up just a little bit. But in February, it went from about 1,800 earthquakes in January of 2013 to over 6,000 in 1 month. Absolutely staggering. That is a huge increase. Then we then started looking at monthly fireball trends. And we're saying, all right, if this is the case, then what we're going to see is going to be an increase of meteors, particularly what we're talking about are fireballs. And if you look at the months of 2011 and 2012, you see that with 2011 as a baseline, that the number of fireballs is trending up, but a very small percentage. However, the minute you get into 2013, the numbers start just dramatically going up, where you're seeing over, particularly in September through December of 2013, anywhere from a 30 to a 50% or more increase over the previous 2 years for that period. All right. So that tells us, hey, we've got incoming. All right. So what we've done is we have been tracking all of this since we published that article back in May of 2015. And that article was by J.P. Jones. You can find it from the website. Were the Mayans using Anunnaki knowledge? Again, that article is Were the Mayans using Anunnaki knowledge? Now, this article we published on May 15, 2015 is really what launched us into our Signs series of articles, which I have now with this 13th installment taken to YouTube. And we've been tracking all different kinds of things, earthquakes, weather, you name it. The articles have had a broad range, but there's always been a consistent, because some things we report, some things we don't, is meteors. We have followed that like hawks. We've stayed on top of it. And what we have seen is just a steady progression that is heavy. Now, in the video, what I do is, first off, I'm just talking about, all of the different types of fireball events. And we have 3 categories that we select on. Now, if you watch the video, I know that for a lot of people, there's some confusion on terminology. I mean, you go to the internet and you say, you're going to search on fireballs and bolides and asteroids and meteors, and literally, it reminds me of what Harry Truman said about economists, that if you laid them all end to end, they'd point in every direction. All these science sites just have different ways of defining it, so it's really difficult to get a beat on it. And one of the first things I wanted to do to help people is to give them a basic lexicon of terms so they could, as they are watching news reports through mainstream propaganda press and alternative media, which is now being suppressed as fake news, that they would be able to hone in on the terms that are really important. And fireballs is the most key indicator of a major event. Now, the ones that I'm concerned about in this are bolides. And a meteor is just a shooting star. That's what we think about them. In terms of brightness, you have to rank them by their attributes. So the weakest attribute is falling star, all right, or shooting star. Second is going to be a fireball. Third is going to be a bolide. And fourth is going to be a super bolide. Now, a super bolide event, and that's what I'm talking about in this video, is my primary concern right now, are super bolides. The last time we had a significant super bolide event was in 2013 with the Chelyabinsk meteor. And it was both a meteor and a meteorite. And meteorite is impacts the ground, and they did find meteorites, but
that was the one over Russia, right?
That was the one over Russia. Now, that one caused 1,500 people to have injuries and damaged 7,200 buildings. And for those that saw the flash, it was about 3 seconds before they felt the wave. that started blowing in the windows and caused a lot of people to have problems with skin burns. Their faces were peppered with glass, retinal burns, these type of injuries. And so when we looked at the pattern with super bolides, and what we were really looking at to determine super bolides was that we're focusing on what we're calling huge events. Now, AMS, by the way, is, and I talk about that, it's a site that was, organization that was founded in 1911 to measure all of this. And they do a brilliant job. And we use their data and we analyze it and put it forward. Now, the thing about it is that there's what we call multi-state events and huge events. Multi-state is a fireball that's reported by people as it passes over multiple states, and sometimes it'll cross national boundaries. So it's reported in 2 or more countries. But then you have the huge events. Now, huge events is for us was the key indicator. Huge event is something so big that there's over 100 reports to the AMS site observations. So this is something really, really big. And for us, the huge events are in this, if you think of huge event fireballs as the minor leagues and super bolides as the major leagues, there you go. It's one step to the other. And so when we're looking at huge events, there's a different pattern than when we're looking at multi-state or we're looking at total meteors. And that is when you're looking at overall fireballs, the last quarter of the year is where you have most of your activity. But with huge events, the interesting thing is it's mostly the most active quarter is the first quarter. And so when we were analyzing the information, we found that January and February are really heavy months. And for 2016, we saw that it was huge, absolutely huge. Typically, you're running from 1 to 2 huge event fireballs a month. And in February of this year, we had 6. All right, and that's a dramatic uptick. Now, why is that important for us? Is that the Chelyabinsk meteor, that thing came in February of 2013. So it's consistent with this first quarter of the year pattern. And that's the reason why we believe that there is a high risk of another super bolide event in the first quarter of 2017. And this is a real concern. As we point out in our video, when Chelyabinsk detonated, and the thing about a super bolide or bolides in general, is that they will detonate, and there will be sound and there will be fragmentation. When the and the difference between a bolide and a super bolide is that a super bolide is brighter than the sun. And whereas a bolide, it's going to be twice as bright as the moon, whereas a super bolide is going to be, brighter than the sun. Now, the Chelyabinsk, when it detonated the airburst, it released the energy equivalent to 30 Hiroshima atomic bombs, and the flash was 30 times brighter than the sun. It was a 30-30 event, all right? And so that is the main concern. And you look at the damage, and the damage could have been far worse. It was fortunate for Russia that the Chelyabinsk meteor detonated well away from populated areas, and they were not directly under the blast. You have a super bolide detonate like that and releasing energy equivalent to 30 Hiroshima atomic bombs, and imagine what would happen if something like that detonated over Chicago, New York, Paris, London, Rome. You're talking about massive, huge death toll. So we are tracking this statistically. We're looking at the absolute trends. What we do in the video is that I give people a lexicon of terms so that they can understand the differences, and also relative sizes and attributes so that you can make sense of the news reports. And particularly with regard to the double talk, that will surely happen. And then after giving everyone the lexicon, I go through analysis of the data, and we actually have a historical that goes back to 2009, and with just absolutely mind-boggling results. So we're very, very, very much at risk. And, and when I close the video, I have very specific information for people to help them and their loved ones avoid injury if they are in the proximity of a super bolide detonation. I mean, if you're going to have a big meteor that hits the ground, if you're in ground zero, you're in ground zero. But like I said, a super bolide event is statistically what we're seeing the greatest possibility. And this could be something where we have rocks that are thrown at us by the approaching Planet X system. Keep in mind that back in February 2013, NASA had everybody looking at the keyhole event with a asteroid. I think it was called DA4 2012, something like that. I can't remember. And they were saying if it hits this orbital keyhole, then it's going to come around and it'll be an impact event in the future. And well, everybody's watching for that, and it turned out to be a non-event. And while everyone's focused on the non-event, pow, this thing comes out of nowhere, detonates over Russia between the border, near the border of Europe and Asia. And the thing that was most interesting was the media kept pressing. They kept saying, well, you had us looking at this other thing, nothing happened. How come you missed this? How come this happened on your watch? And they were asking the same question, not only of the Americans, NASA, but also the Russians, their defense organization. Why didn't you see this thing coming? And finally, after a lot of badgering, NASA just said, we didn't see it coming because it came out from behind the sun. And we don't look that way.
Let me jump in for a second if I can, Marshall. You remember in October when the executive order coordinating efforts to prepare the nation for space weather events, via White House, Office of the Press Secretary, you can read about it online, and it's basically going to secure a lot of the satellites and stuff and also the nuclear reactors here. Do you think that they did that in preparation of fireballs, meteors, what you're referring to, or could this be for more military purposes, all of the above?
All of the above. I mean, when they're talking about space weather, what they're talking about is CMEs in particular, coronal mass ejections, solar flares. And if we have a Carrington event like they had back in the late 1800s, that's it. Life as we know it will cease to function. And that event, the Carrington event, was, and you're going to hear a lot about that event because this was something that it was the solar storm of 1859. And this happened about 4 or 5 years after they were laying telegraph wires in both Europe and the United States. And the Carrington event was so powerful that you had telegraph offices. The equipment was fusing and catching fire, but they had wildfires all across Europe and the United States where they had run the lines because they were shorting out and causing just huge number of fires that had to be put out. And this is on a very, very simple analog system, all right, powered by earth batteries. Now, if you take that kind of energy, and keep in mind that they were seeing the aurora borealis in Hawaii, and in Moscow in Europe, they were reading the newspaper at night. So this is how profound that storm was, that solar storm of 1859. You take and hit the Earth with that kind of energy again, and that's it. Our satellites are down, GPS is down, everything's down. Satellites will just get fried and toasted. They can put them, if they see it coming, and they can see it coming because its CME is typically preceded by a solar flare. Now, a solar flare is going to hit here in approximately 8 minutes because it's the speed of light. And on what's going to follow, and it'll vary between, say, 12 to 24 hours, depending on velocity, will be the plasma from that storm. And when that hits, bada boom. All right, that's really going to do some serious damage. And the flare is also going to do serious damage as well. They can't do anything, and the flare will blind quite a few satellites. That's no question about that. But the CME, that'll take out whatever's left. So if we have another Carrington event now, consider the fact that a lot of our internet traffic is via satellites. That shuts down. So what we'll probably find is internet speeds are going to go back to the days of 56K dial-up modems because they're going to lose so many different ways of moving the data around the world. You're also going to have, it's going to turn the freeways into parking lots because the electronic ignition in modern cars will get fried. It's just a whole host of things that it's really going to take us back to the agrarian age, so to speak. So it's a huge event. So solar storm is definitely a problem, especially because the sun is interacting with Nemesis, its much smaller twin. And Nemesis is a brown dwarf star. Brown dwarfs are something that are relatively new to astronomy. They were theorized to exist about a half a century ago, but it wasn't until the last few decades that they really started mapping them out and finding them and realizing that this is there are many more brown dwarfs in our galaxy than there are of our own sun. And so this is a real issue. They're interacting with each other, and we're already seeing that. Weather patterns are changing, but then, you can't say that it's any one thing. And what we have right now is that all across the world, the governments are doing terraforming. That's, people call it chemtrailing. They prefer that you call it, geoengineering. But what they're doing right now is they're literally radically changing the environment of the entire planet.
Did you see the soup? Did you see the soup? I'm sorry to jump in, but I'm glad you brought that up because I feel this is important. We talked a little bit off the air about how I was driving yesterday and looking at the clouds and the sun behind the clouds, and the way that it was set up is you could look right at the sun behind the clouds. It looked just like the moon, but it wasn't intense on the eyes. And it was just this real weird, eerie silver during the day. I talked to Cliff High earlier today from the Half Past Human web bots, and we were discussing how even the atmosphere, if you look out, it's not blue like it used to be. It's more of like this metallic silverish blue. And I asked, so what's the point of this this chemtrail stuff? Could this be similar to the movie Highlander 2, if you saw that, where they had to re-engineer an atmosphere because they destroyed it? But then if you watch the movie Superman, the most recent Superman movie, not the one where he was with Batman, but the where Kal-El is brought out, and they're basically aliens. They come to Earth, and they've got this terraforming machine that literally it's going to destroy the Earth for humans, but for them, it's going to be just fine. And I'm thinking to myself, is that kind of slowly what they're doing, this slow boil deal?
Boy, it sure does look like it. I mean, what we have right now is global dimming. So you have, on one hand, there are a lot of scientists that are going, with all the carbon that's in the air and the oceans are getting to a point where they're saturated, and they're not going to be able to sequester that much more CO2, yet we're showing temperature declines. Well, and then there are the folks that go, well, see, we told you there's no such thing as global warming. Well, what's really happening is this chemtrailing or geoengineering. They changed the term so people really don't clue on to what's happening. And it's dimming. So you look at the skies, you don't see it. Now, there are places where you can see, you can still see a blue sky. I remember last year driving cross country from Minnesota, up through, Montana, and then back down into Nevada, and went to a couple of different sites. We went to go see the presidents, Mount Rushmore, and then went to see Yellowstone.
Beautiful area.
Beautiful areas. When at Mount Rushmore, the sky was absolutely beautiful blue. It reminded me of when I was a child. It was just so beautiful. I actually took video of it, so I'd just have it so that I could remember it. And I remember watching the people, and everyone was moving and happy and smiling and animated, doing touristy things, buying things, eating, being active. But at Yellowstone, it was a funeral dirge. I mean, it was awful because they were chemtrailing the supervolcano like crazy, because Yellowstone has an ion vortex it generates from its magma chamber. And what they do is they're continually pouring heavy amounts of chemtrail on top of Yellowstone, because what happens is it comes down and then gets caught in the ionic vortex, and it goes way, way up into the outer regions of the atmosphere. And then it just starts moving with the air currents. And, what they're spraying over Yellowstone makes it as far as Chicago to the east. So they're using Yellowstone essentially as as a sprinkler system. And it was just awful. I mean, you could actually see the jets, the chemtrail jets, when there was a parting of the clouds, and you'd see open sky between two clouds. You would see a jet actually go right into that opening and spray it shut. And when I was looking at folks, they have an expression that at these tourist places, the folks that work there, they say there's two principal groups of folks that go to places like Yellowstone and Mount Rushmore: newly dead and newly wed, or nearly dead and newly wed. You saw a lot of people who were newlyweds and they were really happy, but you saw a lot of retired people who were there. And I remember at Mount Rushmore with the beautiful blue skies and all of the senior citizens that were there vacationing were really animated, moving around, happy, engaged. And at Yellowstone, there was so much chemical in the air that they were moving around like rusty robots, automatons, thunk, thunk, thunk. They weren't speaking to each other, no animation. The faces were gloomy. And it was even affecting the young people that were there. They were, gloomy, and, it just, you were sprayed as much. And when I was looking at one of the geysers and I got up close, I actually suffered sulfur burns in my lungs, which I'm treating now. And uh, yeah, that was a really bad thing for me. I never in my whole life ever had asthma symptoms, and developed that immediately right after being at Yellowstone with all the chemtrail spraying. So they're doing that. They're changing the chemtrail formula. They're also changing the patterns. Here I'm in the Reno area. There's a squadron of 6 jets that are up nearly every day, pumping out tons of this stuff directly over the Reno area. And occasionally what they'll do is they'll do a low and slow pass where you see them come down, and typically they're about 20 to 25,000 feet. And this jet came down and he was anywhere from about 10 to 15,000 feet above my head and flying really slow. And that's when it's insidious, because I watched him spraying this stuff and it comes out, like Progresso soup. It's really thick and clumpy. And then it kind of reminds you of a zipper on a sleeping bag, how you get the little clumpy looking pattern that looks like a zipper. And then each of the clumps would then descend, and then it would turn into a ball of chemical aerosol. And so you could see it, it kind of went from sleeping bag zipper to dingo balls. Like chemtrail dingo balls.
Very descriptive.
There you are. And, and how do people react to it? I mean, it was a funny thing. I was standing there in the parking lot, the complex I lived in at the time, and there was this woman walking her dog, and I pointed up and I said, "Look what they're spraying on us." And I looked back at her. She looked at me. She wouldn't look up. She just spun around on her heels and ran off with her dog like I had too many eyes in my head.
Call up security, must call Homeland Security. We have a terrorist that can think for himself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what happens. So, things are progressing not in a very good way. I think next year is going to be the year when things really start to pop. There are some of the indicators. I knew that there's right now, for those of us who have been talking about Planet X for a long time, the internet suppression. You go to the search engines, do a keyword search on the term Planet X or Nibiru, and if you find me, it'll be one listing and it'll be 6 or 7 pages down. What you're seeing mostly are going to be government-controlled sites, schools, some of the newer people that are publishing, a lot of the debunkers who are debunking it. So the conversation has been shifted, which is going to make it much more difficult for people who are coming into awareness now to get information from folks who've been reporting on this for a very long time, because the suppression now is pretty tough. And this is something your listeners can, right after the interview, go in and just, I don't care, whichever, Google, Yahoo, Bing, go type the words Planet X, go type Nibiru. You don't see me. You don't see Zeta Talk, and Nancy Leader has always been, first or second page results on Planet X and Nibiru. You don't see it. So there is a huge amount of suppression. I don't know if you're hearing the same thing from other folks in the genre.
Well, absolutely. Even Cliff and I talked about this for a bit, and certainly there's a new system in play that is suppressing much information. Now, I can certainly see both sides of this, because there are a lot of clickbait sites out there that bring information and stuff to the table that doesn't do any good for the alternative community and truth. I mean, they're if anything just as bad as these other guys. But at the same time, it's also, there's a lot of legit good researchers out there, people that are wanting to get to the truth, that have been exposing these agendas for years, like yourself. And now if you type in Planet X, which I just did before the show, like you were on page 3, and it was, like you said, there was multitude of sites like NASA, space.com, or something similar to space.com. So what do we do about this? I mean, is there a way that the people that are true and genuine and have good data, yet they get suppressed, how do they get out to the people and the communities and the masses now with this suppression going on?
Well, I have seen good people do something like this, and I have seen them be very, very effective. And, if you can remember years back, you heard the term sundogs all the time, sundog,
Right.
sundog, sundog, sundog. And it was a knee jerk. It was neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. The minute you heard sundog, your brain just went, okay, let's
Trigger word.
switch off, darn, I'm done here. And it's like finding the little off switch on the Energizer Bunny. And it was, and sundogs was, if you're going to see sundogs, you're going to see, at that time, you would see sundogs if you lived in Minnesota in the winter. Okay, you had to have really cold conditions. And a sundog is a beautiful halo, and it's kind of like a rainbow, a white rainbow that just goes from one horizon to the other around the object. And so they're very, very unique, very different looking. And when they were saying sundogs, that was the NLP term. Well, what happened was, I had a lot of people up in the Northeast where they're going to see Minnesota, Wisconsin, places like that, where you're going to see these things. These folks were getting onto social media sites everywhere, and they were starting to tell people, you don't know what you're talking about. Look it up. You're using a word and you're stupid. But they didn't say stupid. They were so very polite. They were just politely persistent. No, you don't understand what a sundog is. Go look. Okay. Well, it was effective. And people started looking because of, you have folks in Minnesota that are going, you don't know what you're talking about. Go research the word.
Right.
Well, that was so powerful that when was the last time you heard the word sundogs?
I heard the term sundogs a few days ago, actually.
Okay. When you hear it, all right, and somebody uses the term, you immediately know they don't know what they're talking about. Period. Okay. Gil Broussard did an interview with Watcher series with Pinlight out of Hollywood. And he was going, oh, yeah, there's all kinds of sundogs. I mean, immediately I knew this guy is echoing NLP terminology. And but bottom line is sundogs have absolutely nothing to do with what people are observing with Planet X. And, I brought out back in October, end of October, Planet X System Update number 4, and I brought it out in 3 parts. And what was interesting was the first part was called Winnipeg and Awareness. And what I actually do is I went into that and I showed people exactly how disinformation operatives propagate viral hoaxes through the internet. Okay. And, it was this guy that, he got Dill Martin to put up a stupid observation video that was a viral hoax, nothing more. And I show that exactly for what it is. And then I talk about awareness, the people who are having dreams, visions, and premonitions, why they are and why they're so important. And so in the 3 parts, that was the most viewed. The one that was the least viewed, and I was totally, utterly surprised when I looked at the stats, was part 2 of 3, which was reliable observations. And there I show a pattern of observations from around the world of an object at the 3 o'clock position relative to the sun. All right, just above the horizon. And I show it, from Spain and from other places. And there's this real consistent pattern. And that of the 3 parts was the least popular because let's be honest, there's so many people throwing so much stuff up there right now, so many observation videos, that it gets lost in the traffic. But the one that surprised me, the one that was the most popular and had the second most views, was the 3rd one, which was the Luciferian agenda. And I believe that it was this 3rd one that I did, Planet X System Update number 4, part 3 of 3, Luciferian agenda, that actually prompted the suppression of my work. Because in that video, what I do is I go through and lay out exactly what the global elitist agenda is and how they're going to execute it. I reveal their master plan. And so I have been duly punished since that. If you really want to understand what the big master plan is, then you watch part 3 of 3 of Planet X System Update number 4. You can catch it from my site or catch it on YouTube. You're not going to, if you go into YouTube and type Planet X, even though I have 3 videos that start with the word Planet X, you're not going to see it in the YouTube listings. After they, when I posted that, the stats were just taking off. Boom. The videos were just going really huge. And then all of a sudden it was like somebody hit a key and that was it. Boom. And they pulled me out of the YouTube listings. So if you want to, like I said, you really want to understand what they're going to do, how they want to kill you and your family by making you die in place, watch the Luciferian agenda. And, now, long term, are they going to be effective with this cover-up and suppression? As long as people can still get out to the internet, as long as there are people who know where to look for information and where to find helpful information, they'll start relaying that. Even though there's the suppression in the search engines, good people out there have been following your work, my work, the work of others for many years. They're going to get out there and start saying, here, go check these websites, go look here, go look here, go look here. And so I can see that, it'll come back. Will it come back, to the extent before? Well, that depends on what happens next year in 2017. And I think 2017 is going to be the bellwether year. This is the one when everything goes. There were 2 men that gave very, very strong predictions for 2017, in the latter part of 2017, as a matter of fact. Bob Dean in 2008 gave an interview to Karen Cassidy, Project Camelot. Karen does good work. And what he said was, she said, when are we going to see this? He said, 2017, take it to the bank. Those were his exact words. 2017, take it to the bank. And he said that back in 2008. And he also said that we would be on the same side of the sun when the Nemesis Planet X system starts arcing southward into its aphelion leg. And that's when the guacamole hits the fan as far as we're concerned. And but then, as I reported with you earlier this year, Ed Dames in August You know, he did his swan song. He had his last major public appearance, and for me it was just wow, because I had several people reporting back to me, and I was debriefing them, and it was very consistent. They all said the same things. At least 80% of my work was validated by what Ed Dames revealed, and he said in November of this year, or 2017, excuse me, in November 2017, we'll see it, and it's going to be about the size of the moon in the sky when we do. So, which means we'll start seeing it sooner. And as I point out in my video, Planet X System Update number 4, Part 3, Luciferian Agenda, we're going to have a final harbinger as to when's the last chance to prepare to do something about surviving this coming tribulation. When are we going to know? What's going to be the sign? Is it going to be in the heavens? Is it going to be on the earth? You know, no, it's going to be on CNN, and they're going to be lying to us. Bold-faced lying. MSNBC, Fox News, because these are all corporate media propaganda outlets. All right. I worked with CNN back in the 80s. That was when they were a lean, mean news machine. Now they're just Pravda-style script readers. And and they know it. They don't have the credibility with the public anymore. People know that they're just, it's news entertainment, if you want to be euphemistic about it. But what will happen is when the Planet X system comes out from behind the sun, which interestingly enough, in the Colburn Bible, the ancients tell us that what happens is that it kind of dances around behind the sun and then all of a sudden comes out and pops out. And that's what's going to happen, because right now it's on the opposite side of the sun from us. And when we merge and we're kind of in our orbits coming very slowly at a very creeping pace, coming to where we're both going to be on the same side of the sun. And when people are seeing it, it's going to look like a big angry red comet with two tails. And so what will happen is you're going to have them talking about it's an interesting new celestial object phenomenon. But it's going to pass over our heads. So it's not on, an impact trajectory with Earth. Not to worry. You don't have to go and watch Deep Impact 89 times. And people are going to go, oh, it's an interesting light show. Nothing's going to happen. That'll be the harbinger side. That's when they use that lie. We know. This is your last boarding call, period. Miss it, and after that, the ship will have sailed. Now, when does this window of opportunity close? If the harbinger sign it's just an interesting sign in the sky, what is the closure of that window? When do we know, if you haven't done it by then, done something? That's it. My motto is, destiny comes to those who listen and fate finds the rest. And so if fate is going to be your destiny, then that destiny is going to be when they come back on CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all the propaganda outlets, and they say, well, we didn't anticipate all of the meteors and all of the earthquakes and this and that, to be so severe. Yes, we've been concerned, but it's more severe and more than what we had projected for you earlier. But we're on top of it, and trust us, we'll get through this just fine. And when you hear, trust us, we'll get through this just fine, if you haven't done anything by then and you're in a bad place, you're screwed. That's all. You're screwed. And you've done it to yourself. And this is because, most people are going to want those lies. They're not going to want the truth. They're going to want to hear it's an interesting celestial phenomena. Go back to work. Go shop. Go to Amazon. Buy things. Okay? That's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear that, hey, you need to prepare for the possibility that we're looking at the end of life as we know it, and with a dramatic reduction in population of the globe. People don't want that. They'll see it. That's the reason why, the question, when am I going to see it with my own two eyes, is it's a ridiculous question. Because people will say, when do I see it with my own two eyes? And then when they see it, what are they going to do? Well, I'm not smart enough to figure this out. I'm going to go to CNN and they're going to tell me. And then you're going to have these scientific types, and they're going to, it's an interesting light show, and people are going to switch off. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I wanted you to lie to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But there's going to be enough people who are going to look at that and they go, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'll think for myself, thank you. And what I'm seeing with my own two eyes is a clear and present danger. And it's time to do something. It's time to bust a move. And so my book that I just published, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, I wrote it specifically for this window of opportunity, this last best chance to do something. And I wrote it for two audiences. First, faith-based leaders, because the ones that are going to be able to mobilize a response that's going to be reasonable and successful will be faith-based organizations. I mean, for years, for 15 years, I've been consulting with people who do me and mine preparation. That's it. I'll go in the bunker with my family and we'll be fine. Great. You got 2 years supply of food. When you come up, guess what? You've been eating all these, organic rations and having a good time watching The Sound of Music in your indoor jacuzzi. When you come up, very nasty people are going to smell your healthy body from about a mile away, and then you're going to die badly, very badly. That's why I call them the bunker bunnies. It's communities of 100 or more that are going to be viable, and faith-based ones, the people who have, a love of God. They walk humbly with their God, and that's how you're going to get through it, is you got to have that connection to Creator. And this was something that I came to this topic as a science guy, but I realized that, we're sitting there and people are praying, oh, dear God, help me. Dear God, help me. Dear God, help me. It's like, how do we get God working with us on this? Wrong. It's about how do we work with God on God's plan. That's how you get through it. And so faith-based organizations are going to have an ability to understand that and pull together a group of people, 100 or more in a community, and they'll be resourceful. What I see with a lot of people is what I call Costco prepping, And when things get dicey, they're all going to be running to Costco up and down the aisles with their carts, and you're going to hear them lamenting, they're out of Tabasco sauce, we're going to die. They're out of Tabasco sauce, we're going to die. Because that's it. All they know how to do is go get a shopping cart and max out your credit card, and that's your response to it. Buy things, because we're consumers. Well, what I'm trying to say with the book is, you got to think your way through it. It's not about holding on to things. It's about holding on to each other. And resources are important, but it's not having things that's paramount. It is people who have the knowing of things who are going to be your most valuable resources. And so that is the focus of the book, is to help faith-based leaders to take that last bit of opportunity to move forward. Now, the other audience that I'm talking to are the people I've been talking to from the very beginning. Folks that are in awareness. And I will tell you, people have been in awareness because they've had dreams, visions, and premonitions as children. Most of them, that's the case. They got big hearts and small wallets. And I do love them so. They are salt of the earth. They are the meek. and they're scattered all across the country. And I think God did this intentionally. Think about it. If God said, I'm going to take everybody that's in awareness and put them in Chicago, great. Bomb Chicago, that's the end of awareness. But they're scattered everywhere. Like, from the standpoint of the elites, it's like there are fleas all over a dog's body. Where do you itch first? Okay. And so they don't get to see each other all that often, but I see them all the time because I talk to them all the time. I do this every day. And I just love these people and what they can do. And so what I did with the book is I wrote this for them, because if you're in awareness, I want to talk to those of you out there that have been in awareness, particularly the ones of you that were in awareness when you were children. And you're probably right now 50 years and older. You're in awareness because you made a commitment to Creator to be this way long before you ever were born, perhaps even lifetimes ago. And your mission as someone in awareness is to be a teacher, a mentor, and a comforter. And you bring to the tribulation something that's going to be sorely needed. You're going to be centered. Now stop and think about it. Most of the people that go through awareness take years, if not decades, to process this. There's 5 stages of catastrophism, and it takes them a long time to process that. But when we are looking up and they're saying, it's just an interesting celestial phenomena, it's a new kind of comet, don't worry, it's an interesting light show. There are going to be people that know otherwise. They're going to trust their gut. They're going to trust their gut. And when they do, they're going to have to take and do awareness compression, a process that others have had a half of a lifetime or longer to do. They've got to squeeze that down into a matter of weeks or months. That is going to be hellacious. And so imagine the leader of a faith-based organization is going to be like, a hurricane of emotions. People are going to be in panic mode. Oh my God, what do we do? Blah, 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 blah. They're going to be arguing. They're going to be, I believe the government. The government would not lie to us about something this big. Really? Where does they lie to us about everything they want to? And
But they
do it all
love
the
us.
time. Huh?
But they love us. They wouldn't lie to us, would they?
Really? Is that sativa?
Hello.
Hello. That's a bong hit from the future. But, if people can just find the eye of the storm in the midst of all of this sudden chaos about the need to do something, that there's a place to go where you can contemplate and think in a quiet place to make important decisions that are going to really have a direct impact on the viability of whatever community you're going to gather together. This is invaluable. And this is the reason why those who are in awareness are in awareness. This is their part of God's plan. They are the soothsayers of the tribulation. They are the ones that can look into the future and project and talk intelligently about it in a centered and calm way. So what I did was, and I put it on the back of the book. I said, you need to start going out and church shopping right now. Find these faith-based leaders, who can walk and chew gum, that they get it. They can see what's coming and that they're going to take it on the right way. And then what you do is you have an extra copy of the book and you walk up to them and you hand it to them and say, what you need right now is a plan. This book is your plan. And if you have any questions about it or anything else about what is coming in the tribulation, I am at your service. Always glad to help. Now, if you're doing that, You now are introducing yourself to a faith-based organization at the leadership level. And you are coming with a unique talent. You are that soothsayer. In Native American tribes, it's like the medicine man or the medicine woman. You have a wisdom that transcends the ordinary. And, one of the things that I hear from folks in awareness, and particularly the ones who are grandparents, and I call them the young grandparents because they have children, but their grandchildren are still minors. And so their children are the ones in denial going, Mom, Dad, you're as crazy as a peach orchard boar. Shut up about all this. And guess what? They live in some place like Los Angeles, ground zero location. All right. And the grandparents understand the risk. And all the grandparents want to do is to save their progeny. There can be no more noble act of love than that. And they're so frustrated, they're so tormented because they can't get their family to even take a glance at the hard empirical data that says the end of our civilization is coming upon us, that the Mayans were right, which is what we point out in our new video. Signs 13, Meteor warning. The Mayans were right. We were wrongly bushwhacked. The elites, as I point out, wanted us to think that it was a non-event when actually it was a harbinger. And you don't have the event on the harbinger. The harbinger says the event is coming, and it came to pass. The harbinger was fulfilled. And it is happening. The Mayans were right. But if you ask people about the Mayan calendar, what are they going to say? Nonsense. You're an idiot. You believe in that stuff. Blah, 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 blah. Mockery, ridicule. They know better. They know nothing. In fact, what they know is wrong. And the reason why is what the elites want is for people to die in place. The vast majority of our population, like any other nation that borders the sea, is along the sea. It's along the shoreline. And so if the West Coast and the East Coast and the Gulf get hammered, wow, you've immediately reduced the population significantly. What, 60%, maybe more? You look at the Georgia Guidestones in Georgia, and it's a 10 Commandments for the 21st century that was brought out by a secret society. And I talk about this in Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, okay? I devote a whole chapter to this with a very detailed analysis of the psychology and what's behind it. And so, for those that are interested in Georgia Guidestones, that's reason enough to buy the book. But one of the things that it says, the first of the guides, if you will, is keep the population of the planet under 500 million. But it doesn't tell us how we get there. It just says we're going to be there. And if it's keep it under 500 million, what does that mean? It very well mean that by the end of this coming tribulation, there's only 250 million people left on the planet after the worst of it passes. Now, by the end of the tribulation, which I'm projecting to be 10 or 12 years from first grumble to last grumble, we could have 1 million to 2 million survivors, or billion survivors after that. But at the low point, 250 million, we could be reduced to that. And so, the elites understand that this is, for them, we are no different than the catfish that we buy in the store, raised in a farm. That's all. Fill up the pen, feed the catfish, Purina catfish chow. When they're big enough,
Right.
pull them up out of the net, and off they go to Safeway. All right, and there we are. We're having catfish fillets. We're no different. We're farm fish. All right. And for them, as I point out in the Luciferian agenda, they want to see the most dramatic reduction of the population because they're going to, at a certain point in the tribulation, and I point this out in my video, they're going to come up and they're going to offer inducements to slavery. Because here's the news about Planet X. I mean, everybody thinks about, well, Planet X is bad. It's catastrophe. It's global cataclysm. It's all these things. But it is also a gift of freedom. Because all of the control mechanisms that the elites are using to control us are going to be shattered. And while we're going to be dying in vast numbers, we will be, for the first time in a long time, we're going to be dying as free men and women. The last flyby of the Planet X system was Exodus. And think about it. Moses, as a prince of Egypt, knew it was coming. And he knew in chaos would be opportunity because the Egyptians would be weakened. Their governance and their military would be weakened by everything. And in that chaos, the Hebrews could be extracted and given their freedom. So in Exodus, the last flyby of Planet X system, which was a benign flyby relative to what we're facing this time, of people were freed. But here's the opportunity God is giving us with this flyby. Yes, it's going to hurt, but this could give us the freedom of our species. And if we look at what's happening today, it's a good thing coming. I know it's awful to say, but it is a good thing to come. Right now, people want to break loose to this globalist, elitist agenda. And the same people that are the globalists, elitists, these are the same ones that want to see us die in place. They're the ones that are, trying to derail Brexit in England. They're the ones that are doing this fake news bait and switch. I was hearing, and then this morning, I was listening to NPR. I always want to get the propaganda straight up. And Obama's on talking about the Russians. And he's going, well, everybody in Washington knows that they meddled with the election. I
got to say something about that when you're done.
Well, Rex, how many people have you had on your show in the last year who've said, we believe that Obama's going to be the last elected president?
A lot. And even people off the record have told me the same thing, that they don't feel Trump's going to make it in office, even though that he's been elected. And I find it fascinating. I'm looking at this from the outside, and I can read the media easy. I can see the subliminal programming that they do, the NLP, etc. You remember back when Trump was being, I think it was either the second or third debate, where they asked him if he didn't win the election, if he was going to question it and say that there was tampering. And they made a big deal about him saying basically, yeah, I would question it and I might, fight it, essentially. I didn't even think he said he would fight it, but he said he might. Well, they made a huge deal out of it, spinned it and everything. In the public eye, some people that weren't for his, for what he was basically wanting to accomplish, or whatever, they were just like, well, he should just submit, etc. Yet when he wins, essentially from, what's on the news, they're showing us all the electoral votes, he's in. Well, guess what? The Podesta comes out in front of the audience and says, just go home because nothing's been completely decided yet, when they knew darn well that they lost. So they do a complete spin on it. And I don't know I used to think that they were all in on it together, but now I'm starting to wonder, because the further down the rabbit hole this goes, unless they're really just trying to cause a civil war, there's 6 corporations that control 90% of the media. And you can go to Business Insider, you can see the 6 corporations. It's very easy. You've got GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, CBS controls over 90% of what you see and hear in the media, which is very influential on your subconscious mind and your conscious mind. Now, where am I going with this? Well, they couldn't win that way, so now what are they going to do? Well, they're going to do their best to just spin it and say, oh, well, it was the Russians that got him in office. It wasn't us, so there's no way he should be in it. He loves the Russians. And, at the same time, you can almost kind of, you're like, well, did he really? Maybe he does love the Russians. Maybe they are working in on it together, because Russia comes out essentially a day after, Trump wins, and Putin says, yeah, this is great. We're willing to go to bat with you guys now. And you can look at it either way. I can certainly see both sides of the coin here. So I'm trying to be as neutral on this as possible. But I see a lot of damage control, and I see a lot of psyops, and I see the media trying to spin the overall archetype of Trump as being a Russian agent, so they can find a way to manipulate the elections and somehow get him out of where he is currently. What is your take on that? Now, before you go there, let me just read some of these articles real quick. This stuff is literally 50 minutes old, 1 hour old. You can type this in to a search engine. Go to Google, type it in Google. FBI backs CIA conclusion of Russian hacking motive, says Brennan in message. This is in PBS NewsHour. Let's go to Time or Time. President Obama warns Russia over hacking. Don't do this to us because we can do stuff to you. Ooh, that's scary. Hillary Clinton, Putin's alleged involvement in Democratic hacks stems from personal beef, on ABC News. This is all less than an hour old. What's your take on it?
Well, what they're doing is they're setting it up to overturn the election. In 2015, Bob Fletcher gave me an interview on my podcast, Cut to the Chase. And he said 6 months before Planet X, the guacamole hits the fan, as I say, we're going to have martial law, and it's going to be for a reason completely unrelated to Planet X. All right. Well, if they overturn the election, all right, that could really trigger a civil war. People are going to be out on the street and they're protesting, and what I find disappointing was everybody was saying all these negative things about the people that voted for Trump, that they would do all kinds of terrible things, and the very behaviors that they're predicting are the very people who lost. They're the ones that are, doing the terrible stuff. But if they derail the election results, and that clearly is what they want to do. I mean, they just had Charlie Sheen come out, or not Sheen, the father, not Charlie, but the father. He came out with a video with a lot of movie stars, and what they're doing is sending an appeal to the Electoral College to derail the election. And they're saying, don't vote for Hillary, just let it go to the House. Blow it up, let it go to the House, create a constitutional crisis. And that's what they want to do, is create some sort of constitutional crisis. And meanwhile, this whole thing with the Russians, this is nonsense. Now, here I have some experience because, I had a business in Russia. I traveled there quite a bit during the 90s and flew over the poles. That's actually what got me into all the work that I'm doing now. So I saw the deterioration of the Arctic. And what I've been following through back channels and people that know what's going on is that the globalists are really maneuvering hard against the Russians. And there's a lot of antagonism. They're trying to provoke something. They really want to have Obama, Hillary, all of these ilk. They really do want to have us into a conflict with Russia. The Russians don't want the conflict. Trump doesn't want it. I think the fact that, this, fellow for ExxonMobil who has a strong rapport with Putin, I mean, this is an olive branch, all right? If they overturn the election, then the Russians are going to go, that's it. We're back to the Cold War. And are the Russians going to launch on us? No. But what are they going to do? They're going to fight through surrogates. It'll turn into a proxy war. And so they're going to arm some sort of rogue state. And then those people are going to slip out from underneath their control and launch. And then all of a sudden, we're going to have a limited nuclear war. And hello, it's World War III. And so I'm looking at this, and to me, World War III is coming. And I see Trump as a way to prevent it. And what I see with Clinton and Obama and the globalist agenda is they want that. It is absolutely essential to their plans that there is this nuclear war so that they can, go out and cement their entire control over the entire planet. And there's an awful lot of fighting that's going on, and this is a nervous time. Even if it gets through the Electoral College and Trump squeaks through the Electoral College, and I think they'll get some defects. They'll get some folks that'll jump the fence. But he could very well still carry the Electoral College. Then, Obama is already out there beating the drum on this Russian deal. And it defies logic because, first off, it's the liars who are out there pumping propaganda that are going fake news. Today I read that Facebook is now going to start vetting news reports with Snopes. So they need to change their name.
Unbelievable. With Snopes?
Unbelievable. With Snopes.
Oh, my goodness.
We need to stop calling it Facebook. We need to start calling it Fakebook. Okay? Yeah. Because that's what
retarded.
They're doing. And all of this is they are very, very quickly building, in other words, a catastrophic failure by definition, Rex, is a series of failures culminating in a large catastrophic failure. All right? And so that's what they're constructing right now, is they're constructing this pattern of smaller failures so that they can culminate in a large failure where, maybe after the first of the year, Obama's going to come out with, an unsubstantiated FBI report. The FBI now is coming out and they're backing it. They're getting the FBI now, and this is just published on the Washington Post. Now, the fact that it's published on the Washington Post immediately tells me it's globalist agenda, because the Washington Post is owned by, it's an Amazon company, all right? And they're the guys that when, Planet 9 was announced, Washington Post was the one that did the axe job on the astronomers in Argentina. They're the ones that were smearing dead astronomers. Okay, I've documented all this on my website, what the Washington Post is doing. Go to my website and you'll find out about what Washington Post is doing. This is the most virulent. Bezos owns it, and it is the most virulent propaganda mechanism in print in the country, period, bar none. And the headlines today is FBI backs CIA view that Russia intervened to help Trump win election. Okay. Now, for those of you who voted electronically, think about it. Was the voting machine, was it Wi-Fi? Did it have a wired UTP connection? No. You had a little card, you put it in the machine, you did your vote, then you pulled out the card, handed it to one of the election officials, and then they went ahead and processed your votes. So the voting machines are not networked. But what a lot of people don't know about voting machines is that the software in the voting machines is not open source like the Linux operating system that anybody could look at it and see how it operates. The software is written by foreign corporations who do not reveal their source code. So, I mean, there's all kinds of rigging that goes on with this. And they're setting up this whole catastrophic chain of events. You know, think about the Titanic. I mean, you could say that the Titanic sank the day they laid the keel because they didn't have, the iron that they used for the hull became excessively brittle when it was really cold, as it did in the waters of the Atlantic at that time. You could say that the Titanic started to sink when they left England and they didn't have binoculars for the lookouts. You could say that the ship started to sink when it was originally designed and the rudder was not large enough to turn the ship as quickly as necessary. So you have all of these little things that are failures, that are problems, that they didn't have enough lifeboats because the owners of the ship didn't care about safety. They just wanted the ship to look good, so they reduced the number of lifeboats. All of this culminated in a moment of sheer arrogance, where in the dead of night, they're steaming flank speed, all right, and boom, they hit an iceberg and they go down like a rock. And so that's the same thing. I'm seeing the same Titanic scenario, starting with what they're already doing and how they're attacking Trump, how they're trying to subvert the election through the Electoral College, then how they want to force the election into the House. They have a constitutional crisis so that then they can come out with all of their trumped up Russia nonsense, which doesn't make sense. And that Obama says, well, I'm invalidating the election because of all of this and that and the other thing. And then boom, the country seizes up. We go in, we have riots. We're going to have riots because the reason why we'll have riots is that there will be agent provocateurs to make sure things go south. So you may have a bunch of people marching out there who voted for Trump, and they're in a peaceful march, and the agent provocateurs are going to be the ones that are going to get into the middle of the crowd and start busting windows and shooting guns and setting cars on fire or whatever, doing crazy things, so that then they can come in and boom, storm in with the troops. Ed Dames has been real consistent. He firmly has stated his conviction back in August of this year when he revealed his Planet X information. He said Obama's the last president. And, it's really looking that way. I mean, you take and put it all together in, like dominoes, Rex. Think of it like dominoes. All right? Boom. Titanic at the end of the chain. So that's what I see coming. And what this is telling me with what they're doing now with subverting the election, with the way that, Planet X researchers like myself who've been doing this for years are now being suppressed, that our knowledge is being withheld from people on the internet so that they can't find us, the ones that are now coming into awareness. All of these things together tell me that next year is the watershed year for Planet X. That's it. It's going to happen. And a lot of people are going to die. And they're going to die because they helped the elites to kill them and their loved ones by being in denial. I can't believe they would lie to us about something this big. I can't believe it. It reminds me of a housewife who's doing laundry and finds 5 shades of lipstick on her husband's shirt collar, presents it to him and says, "What's this?" And he goes, "Don't worry, honey. It's just one woman who liked to wear different shades of lipstick every day. but I don't see her anymore because I love you and you're the only one for me. So put it behind you. No worries. And she goes, okie dokie. All right. I see so many people just that illogical. They want to have the okie dokie moment. I don't want to believe my lying eyes. Because if I have to believe my lying eyes, then my world is shattered. And I don't want my world to shatter. I want to hold on to it like mice clutching to straws in a flood. They're going to hold on to it till they drown. And that is, that's everything that I see coming. But I also see a lot of hope for the future, Rex. Okay? I feel sorry for all these people who, through their own foolishness, are going to bring about their deaths and the deaths of their loved ones. I feel sorry for them. But I'm not going to lament and mourn them, because in the final analysis, like I say, destiny comes to those who listen and fate finds the rest. So if they leave their destiny to fate, then they get what they get. That was a choice. They made that choice. I'm just trying to help the ones I can, the ones who are in awareness, the ones who want to make a difference, and the ones who understand it's just not about surviving the tribulation. All right? Because so many people, if they are in awareness, they're focused on this being a time of global cataclysm that is going to result in the end of this civilization, which is true. And given what we're doing to the planet and to each other, maybe that's not such a bad thing. But what's really important is not lamenting the end of this civilization. What is genuinely important is providing a clean slate for the beginning of the next.
So what are you doing now to help with the survivors?
Absolutely. That is my focus right now. The people are in awareness. They want to get through it, and they want us to have a clean slate for a new civilization where humanity is enlightened and free, or a Star Trek future, if you will. That's what I really want to see, is humanity to have a Star Trek future. And so my heavy focus right now is working with my church, Knowledge Mountain Church of Perpetual Genesis. And it's an online, non-denominational teaching church. It's really for people who are in awareness, and it's a way for them to get with like-minded others. And one of the things we're working on right now is I'm going to bring out in January a second edition of a book I published a few years ago. And we're now going to make it freely available in January as an ebook, both in Kindle and PDF, called Survival Wellness Advocacy. And I am doing this for the folks who are in awareness to show them a way to increase their value proposition, if you will, for a viable survival community. The logic being, if you cannot afford a mountain of beans, you need to be worth your weight in beans. And survival advocacy is the way to do that. And it particularly focuses on women, mothers in particular, grandmothers, because these are the ones that I hear the hardest laments from about their children and grandchildren in denial. And so we're going to bring this out to give them a path to making themselves worth their weight in beans. And this will be freely available. We'll also do a print edition. People have to pay for that. But the other one we'll get it out there to as many people as we can. And it's called Survival Wellness Advocacy. And this is something that I will be talking a lot about next year. Another thing I'm working on is another small book, which will be called Radio Free Earth, because the deciding technology for us having a Star Trek future will be ham radio. And ham radio is really going to, like everything else, it's going to be hammered And that's mostly because you got a lot of seniors that are doing it now. They don't have a lot of young people because of smartphones. And yet this technology is absolutely essential. And what will happen is that you're going to see some intermediate steps. There are systems in place, ARRL, Amateur Radio Relay League, and I'm part of the ARES program, Amateur Emergency Radio Services. These are really designed to help during a time of catastrophe when all other forms of communication are gone. But even these are going to be hampered, dramatically hampered. And so this other free book that I want to bring out next year, Radio Free Earth, is about how to create human networks, if you will, of ham radio operators that beginning on the local level and then going out to where you can start passing messages to other communities outside of your area and perhaps even across the nation and overseas, because radio is going to be important. It'll be tremendously hampered. There's no question about that, especially when we fly through the tail. I think we're not going to have much radio communication then. But as I point out in my book, Surviving the Planet X Tribulation, we are going to have a really good environment after the flyby for long-haul communications, you know, where you're talking to Asia or we're talking to Europe, for example. And that's because the ionosphere bounce is going to improve. It's actually going to be similar to what it was back during World War II and before. They were using very primitive radios compared to what we have today, and their bounce was tremendous. They were able to talk across the globe. Today, we require very, very sophisticated radios to do what they could do with simple breadboard computers because the environment is so much more difficult to work in. This is a result of, you know, the interaction between our sun and the approaching Planet X system and how it affects our atmosphere. So that's the other thing that I'm doing. I really see that we have a chance to defeat the elitist aim. I mean, what the elitists want to do is just simply reduce our numbers to the point where they can come up with their inducements to say, look, come back into slavery, take our financial systems, let us stick a RFID tag in you and chip you, and you'll have access to clothing, food, medicine, construction supplies, all this stuff that we've been squirreling away in our bunkers. And as I point out in my video, and my fourth video, which Planet X System Update number 4, Luciferian Agenda, is all we need is a critical mass of people who will say no to the inducements, and we win. We have a Star Trek future. But if there's not enough people to say no, then we're going to have slavery for countless generations to come. And we'll finally have our freedom at a point where the planet has been so exhausted of resources that we're just essentially living on a dead Mars for whatever time we have left as a species. So we have a lot more at stake. And I'm really pulling in the direction of, helping bring about that Star Trek future after the tribulation. And for us to be a free and enlightened species. This is my hope and desire. I may not see it in this life, but I surely do want to see it the next time I incarnate. I do believe in reincarnation. And I don't want to reincarnate as a slave of the Anunnaki and the elites. I want to reincarnate into a Star Trek world and have a fabulous future. And I think a lot of other people do. So that is the foundation of the 3 precepts of our church, which are very simple. Our mission is just threefold. Proselytizing is verboten. You don't do it. You're out if you start proselytizing. Our job, very simply, is to help people with self-sufficiency knowledge, hope for the future, and knowing that they're not alone. And if they have those 3 things, they'll take care of the rest on their own. And when the time comes to call the bluff on the elites with their inducements, they'll have something that makes it worth their while to say no, understanding they're not saying no to the carrot, they're going to say no to the stick, because that's how the elites work. But we have a lot at stake. And I think as a final message to all the listeners out there, what I want you to understand is that after this tribulation, our destiny is to have a Star Trek future. It is to have an age of enlightenment. This is what Creator wants for us. This is Creator's plan for us, to have that age of enlightenment. And it doesn't take everybody. It just takes enough to say no to the bluff. Take the chip, the bluff. Just enough people to say no. And if we do that, wow, what a wonderful thing we're going to give to future generations. And, that's it. That's my bag. That's what I'm doing. That's the direction I'm going. There's a lot of folks that are coming in now, and they're putting up all kinds of Planet X validation videos. Great. Let them do it. I'm not about, at this point saying, look what's coming. All right. If you see it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. My thing right now is saying, okay, how do we survive this so that we can have a golden age?
Yeah, that's awesome. And I certainly like that approach. The Star Trek future sounds awesome. Everything from the holodeck to star travel, everything is incredible with that opportunity. So certainly looking forward to that. And I appreciate you coming on the show with us. I know you're extremely busy, so spending as much time as you do with us here at the Leak Project, that is absolutely appreciated. I know that our member base absolutely loves your work. And folks, check out YOWUSA.com. You can pick up the Cobran Bible. I've had several people ask me where to get that. You can get a really good deal on it through his website. Also, Being in It for the Species is a great work. And there's a whole bunch of podcasts, blog articles on there, and information only available at YOWUSA.com. So it was great to speak with you, Marshall. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure, Rex. You're a winner.
Right on. You have a fantastic day and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon.